I've spent years working in places that most people will never even hear about, let alone see. CIA black sites aren't places where you get much time to think or question what goes on. You just do your job, keep your head down, and never ask the wrong questions. I'm a technician, a problem solver. I make sure the equipment runs smoothly, that the systems are up and running without a hitch, nothing glamorous, just routine maintenance. That's what I thought, at least, when I was assigned to the new facility out in the middle of nowhere. It was isolated, locked off from the outside world, no visitors, no distractions. I was told the job would be simple. They just needed someone to check the power grids, ensure the surveillance systems were working, and run basic diagnostic tests on the equipment. No big deal, right? When I first arrived, I thought it looked like any other government facility. Sterile, cold, and efficient. The hallways were lined with white walls, and the hum of the air conditioning unit was the only sound that echoed in the otherwise silent building. But even as I unloaded my things, there was an undeniable chill in the air. I tried to ignore it. It was just the atmosphere. I'd get used to it. The first few days were uneventful, mostly spent in front of computer screens and listening to the low drone of servers working in the background. But that was when I started hearing things. At first, it was subtle. A door closing in the hallway when I knew no one was around, footsteps echoing just behind me. When I'd turn around, no one would be there. But it kept happening, little things that didn't make sense. I tried to shake it off as the stress of being in a new place. One night, it got worse. I had to check the backup generators down in the lower levels of the facility, in the basement. The elevators were out of order, so I took the stairs, my boots echoing against the concrete. The basement was pitch black except for the weak flicker of a single overhead light. The whole place had an industrial feel, cold, metallic, and abandoned. It smelled like old pipes and something else, something foul that I couldn't identify. As I walked further down the hallway, I noticed a few doors that were marked with nothing more than simple numbers. But one door, at the far end of the hall, had a symbol. A faded red warning sign, almost like a cross, scrawled across the door in black ink. The kind of warning that didn't make sense in a place like this. I knew the building well enough to recognize there was nothing down here that required such a thing. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached the door, and when I touched the handle, it was warm to the touch, unnaturally warm, like something was heating it from the other side. I stood there for a moment, unsure of whether I should open it. I'd seen a few people in the hallways earlier, but they'd all kept their distance, avoiding eye contact, not acknowledging my presence. It felt like they were deliberately trying not to draw attention to themselves. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me immediately, a pungent, sour odor that made my stomach churn. The room was small, with nothing but an old metal table in the center, its surface covered in dust and something darker, something that looked like dried blood. But what made me freeze in place wasn't the smell or the mess, it was the sound, the faintest sound of breathing. I strained my ears, my pulse racing. It was coming from a small, dark corner of the room. I stepped forward, moving toward it, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. That's when I saw it. In the corner, half hidden in shadow, was a figure. It looked like a person, but not quite. Their skin was stretched tight over their bones, pale and sickly, with eyes wide open but glazed over, staring into nothing. They were shackled to the wall by thick metal chains that rattled slightly with every shallow breath they took. I stepped back, feeling my chest tighten. My brain couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I wasn't sure if I was looking at a person or something else. It was like the body had been forgotten, left to decay in this dark, forgotten corner of the black site. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the walls. I rushed to it, desperately trying to pull the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The sound of my own panic was deafening as I banged my fists against the door. The whispers started, then soft, low voices, like they were speaking from deep beneath the earth. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt them in my bones. The light flickered, and in the brief moments of darkness I heard something else, a low growl, a sound that wasn't human. I tried again to escape, but this time I felt it, the weight of something watching me. I turned slowly, expecting to see the shackled figure in the corner again, but it was gone. In its place was something darker, something that moved. It was too quick, too fast for my eyes to track, but I saw it, its silhouette, a shadow that seemed to crawl across the walls. And then the whispers turned into words. "They won't let you leave." I ran. My heart pounded in my ears as I stumbled through the basement, fighting the rising panic in my chest. The hallway stretched out before me, but with each step the walls seemed to close in, twisting and distorting. The door to the stairwell finally came into view, and I threw myself against it, praying it would open. It did. I stumbled into the stairwell, gasping for breath, and started climbing. I didn't stop until I was back on the top floor, my hands shaking uncontrollably. But the worst part? When I got back to my room, there was something waiting for me on the desk. A single, crumpled note written in a shaky hand. "Welcome back. We'll be waiting for you." I don't know what's down in that basement. I don't know what they're keeping there. But I do know one thing. I can't leave. Not now. Not ever. Whatever's down there, it's not done with me. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to know what I know. I'm a technician, a cog in the wheel, just doing my job at a CIA black site that no one is supposed to talk about. I was hired to maintain the equipment, run diagnostics, make sure everything worked, no questions asked. I'm just doing my job, right? The site is in the middle of nowhere. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just miles of barren desert stretching out in every direction. The facility is an old, crumbling military base, cold concrete walls, and fluorescent lights that flicker at the edges. When I arrived, I thought the place was like any other government site. Sterile, dead quiet, and lifeless. But after a while, things started feeling wrong. It was small things at first. The sound of footsteps echoing in empty hallways, even when no one was around. I'd pass by rooms that were locked but could still hear muffled noises coming from inside. There were rumors that the black site was more than just an interrogation facility. Some people whispered about experiments, about things that couldn't be explained. At first, I thought it was paranoia. Too many late nights, too much coffee, but the more time I spent here, the more I noticed. One night, I was alone in the control room, running diagnostics on a few servers. The hum of the machines was the only sound in the room. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. I wasn't worried at first. The power went out every now and then, but then I heard it, a tapping. At first, I thought it was just a loose wire or the ventilation system acting up. But the tapping kept getting louder, closer. My heart started to race. I looked around the dim room, my mind running wild. There was no one else on this floor, so where was the sound coming from? The door to the hallway creaked open, but I hadn't touched it. I froze, barely daring to breathe, and waited. Nothing. I told myself it was just my nerves, the isolation starting to get to me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, I was called in to perform a routine check on a newly captured detainee. They didn't give me a lot of information about him, just a name, Gregory Harlow. A man with no past, no records. He had been brought in from a black site in a different part of the world. When I saw him, I felt that familiar chill run down my spine. Harlow was sitting in a small room, hands shackled to the metal table. His eyes were wide, and his skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent. The room smelled wrong, sterile, but with an undertone of something else I couldn't place. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes darted around, but he didn't say a word. "Are you all right?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why I bothered. The detainees were never allowed to speak freely. He didn't respond. But then, his lips moved, whispering just loud enough for me to hear, "Get out. They're coming for you." I felt the blood drain from my face. Before I could say anything, the door slammed open, and a guard came in, ordering me out of the room. For days after that, I couldn't stop thinking about Harlow's warning. But what really started to unsettle me was what happened next. I was back in the control room when the security footage from Harlow's interrogation started acting up. The screen flickered and distorted. The video feed was glitchy, and for a split second, I thought I saw something behind him, a figure, shrouded in shadows, standing just outside the frame. I shook my head, thinking I was imagining things. But then the footage stopped entirely. The room was silent, but I could feel the weight of something watching me. I stood up and checked the cables, but everything was connected. My mind started racing. I decided to take a walk around the facility. It was late, and the halls were empty. The only sound was the shuffle of my boots against the cold tile floor. I passed by one of the interrogation rooms, the door slightly ajar. The faint smell of blood made my stomach churn. I should have kept walking, but something compelled me to peek inside. The room was empty. Harlow was gone. My breath caught in my throat. I turned quickly, wanting to get back to the control room, but then I heard it again, the tapping. Only this time, it wasn't just from one direction. It was coming from every hallway, every room. I could feel the air grow colder as the tapping grew louder and closer. I ran, heart hammering in my chest, and burst into the control room. The monitors were flashing wildly, showing nothing but static. Then the lights flickered and went out completely. In the darkness, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone breathing behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. A voice, low and rasping, echoed in the pitch-black room. "They never leave." I bolted for the door, but as my hand reached for the handle, it froze. The air grew heavier, pressing in from every direction. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I don't remember how I escaped that night or how long I've been wandering through this facility. But I'm still here, and I know they're still watching. The people who were never supposed to disappear, the ones who were never supposed to leave. There's a man who vanished from this place. His name was Gregory Harlow. But I've seen him again. He's here, watching, waiting. And now I'm starting to think I'm next. I've spent most of my career in places like this. CIA black sites, tucked away in the middle of nowhere, operating in the shadows. It's not glamorous work. I'm not out saving the world or making headlines. I'm just a tech specialist, a guy who fixes things when they break. Simple, safe. Or at least that's what I thought. It started like any other day. I was assigned to a new facility, a small site that had been in operation for a few years, but hadn't been in use much lately. Just routine maintenance, they told me. Simple job, nothing to worry about. I should have known better. The place was as bleak as you can imagine, concrete walls, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and a cold that you couldn't shake no matter how high the thermostat went. It was located in the middle of an old military complex. The nearest town was hours away, and there was nothing out here but dirt and the occasional animal. I remember walking through the halls for the first time. Everything seemed sterile, almost too perfect. The floor was spotless, the rooms locked tight, but there was something off about it, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. At first, it was nothing. The hum of machinery, the beep of a distant security system, normal. But then I started hearing things. Quiet at first, a faint voice down the hallway, an occasional tapping on the walls. I figured it was just the pipes or the air ducts making their usual noises. It was an old building after all. But when I passed a door that was slightly ajar and saw shadows moving inside, my stomach dropped. I hesitated, then shook it off. Just my imagination. The first day was uneventful. I spent most of it in the control room, monitoring systems and running diagnostics on outdated equipment. I tried not to think too much about the odd sense of unease creeping under my skin. This was routine, right? Nothing to worry about. But that night, something changed. I was still in the control room, working late to finish up my report, when the lights flickered. It wasn't a power surge. I knew this facility's systems well enough to tell that it wasn't a glitch. It was almost as if something was deliberately interrupting them. I went to check the main breaker, but as soon as I stepped into the hallway, I heard it. A voice, a whisper. Soft and distant at first, but growing clearer the closer I got to one of the interrogation rooms. The voice was low, unintelligible, like someone was trying to speak through thick glass. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. I knew better than to get involved in the day-to-day operations, but my curiosity got the best of me. I approached the door, and that's when I heard the words, Clearer now. Get out, they're watching you. I froze. The voice wasn't coming from the speakers, it wasn't a malfunction. Someone or something was talking to me. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted it open. Inside the room, there was a man strapped to a chair, his face pale and drawn. His eyes were wide, darting around like he was in a panic, but he was alone. No guards. No one watching him, just him. He looked at me, his gaze piercing. Please, he whispered, his voice trembling. Help me. They won't stop. They never leave. Before I could respond, the door slammed shut behind me and the lights went out, plunging me into darkness. My heart was in my throat as I fumbled for my phone, the glow of the screen barely enough to light the room. I heard the tapping again. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from inside my head. I didn't have time to think. I ran back to the control room, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The monitors were all flashing wildly, static scrambling across the screens. But then, I saw something I couldn't explain. On one of the monitors, a figure tall, cloaked in black, stood in the hallway just outside the room I had been in. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't a person at all. It was something else. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if the entire building was closing in on me. I tried to breathe, but every breath felt like I was inhaling shards of glass. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of there. I reached for the emergency phone, but it was dead. I slammed my fist against the console, frustration turning to panic. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, now coming from every direction. And then, the whispering came back. You can't leave. You never leave. I turned to run, but as I did, the walls seemed to shift, contorting and bending. The hallway stretched out endlessly, and the door I had just passed was now gone, replaced by a solid concrete wall. I was trapped. Suddenly, the air grew cold, unnaturally cold. My breath fogged up in front of me. And then I saw it. The shadow. It moved slowly, deliberately, its long fingers stretching out toward me. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body wouldn't move. All I could do was stare as it came closer, the whispers in my ears growing louder, drowning out every other sound. When it reached me, everything went black. I don't know how long I've been here. I don't know if I'm still alive or if I've been something else. All I know is that they told me it was a routine mission, that I'd be in and out, no complications, but I was wrong. And now, I'm still here, trapped, waiting. The tapping never stops, and I know, deep down, that I'll never leave. I didn't expect anything unusual when they sent me to this particular black site. It was just another facility in the middle of nowhere. No name, no questions. Just a place where classified operations happen and everything is tightly monitored. My job was simple enough: check the systems, maintain the equipment, and ensure the security cameras weren't glitching. No surprises, no issues. Or so I thought. The building itself looked like every other black site I'd been to: stark white walls, cold fluorescent lighting, and the constant hum of machines. There was a chill in the air, but that was nothing new. These places are always kept at a temperature that's far colder than necessary. Just part of the job, right? I arrived around dusk, and the place was eerily quiet, as if it were deserted. I figured the staff had all gone home for the night, but I learned that wasn't the case. I passed several of them in the halls. Guys in military fatigues, walking quickly, heads down, like they were avoiding making eye contact. It was strange. They didn't even acknowledge me when I said hello. I was assigned a small, dimly lit room next to a long hallway. It was nothing special, just a desk, some monitors, and a chair that creaked every time I shifted. I set my things down and started working. That's when I noticed the door at the far end of the hallway. It wasn't on any map. I knew this facility. I'd seen the blueprints. The layout was simple and straightforward, but that door didn't exist. I stared at it for a long time, feeling an uncomfortable prickling at the back of my neck. It wasn't even labeled. The others had signs above them: storage, utilities, interrogation. But this one, blank. I should have ignored it. I should have just done my job and moved on. But something in my gut told me I needed to know what was behind that door. The next day, I decided to investigate. I told myself it was just curiosity, just a part of being human. But as I walked down the hallway, I felt something different in the air. It was as though the building itself was holding its breath. I approached the door and put my hand on the handle. It was warm, almost too warm, like it had been touched recently. The faint smell of something metallic lingered around it, sharp and tangy like blood. But I shrugged it off, telling myself I was just tired, overthinking things. The door opened with a low, almost inaudible creak. Inside, the room was dark. I couldn't see much at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I made out the outlines of shelves stacked with what looked like boxes, piles of old files, and strange equipment I couldn't recognize. It looked like a storage room, but there was something wrong about it. In the back corner, a strange device sat on a table. It was large, bulky, with wires and screens covered in dust. The screens flickered as I walked closer, casting an eerie glow across the room. I reached out to touch it, and the air around me seemed to thicken. The buzzing of the monitors grew louder. A faint hum seemed to emanate from the device, vibrating through the floor and into my bones. I didn't know what to think, but I couldn't tear myself away. There was something hypnotic about it. Suddenly, the room shifted. The lights flickered violently, and for a moment, everything felt wrong. It was as if time had slowed down, or maybe sped up. I looked around, disoriented, but the shelves seemed different. The boxes, the papers, none of it was what I had seen before. The labels on the boxes had changed. There were words scribbled across them in red, words I couldn't understand. I was about to turn back, to leave and pretend nothing happened, when I heard a voice. A whisper. "Don't leave." I froze, my blood turning to ice. I was sure it had come from the device, but when I turned to face it, the screens were blank, the hum gone. I stared at the shelves again, and for the first time, I realized something wasn't right. The labels. They weren't in any language I recognized. I backed away, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I could feel eyes on me, even though the room was empty. The silence was deafening, and then, from somewhere in the dark corners, I heard it again. "Don't leave." I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. My heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't stop shaking. I had to get out. I had to get back to my room, but as I turned the corner to the hallway, something caught my eye. The other doors, the ones I'd passed earlier. The labels were different now. I stared at them for a long time, blinking to make sure I wasn't seeing things. They said things like containment, test subject 1, project 47. There were no more signs of storage or utilities. I was back in the same hallway, but everything felt wrong. I ran back to my room and locked the door, my mind racing. What had I just seen? What had I just heard? I checked the blueprints again. The map didn't match the building in front of me. There was no door at the end of the hall. There was no Project 47, no containment, no way out. I tried to leave the facility the next day. I grabbed my things and went to the exit, but when I reached the door, it wouldn't open. There was no one in the control room, no one answering the intercom. Just silence. The building felt like it was closing in on me. I'm still here. I can't get out. And that door, it's still there, waiting, watching, and the whispering never stops. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I can't sleep anymore. Every night I close my eyes and hear those whispers. Every time I walk through a hallway, I swear I see something out of the corner of my eye, just a shadow. I can't even look at my reflection without feeling like someone's watching me. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. I was just a contractor, an IT tech who had worked on a few government projects before. Simple stuff. That night, I was brought in to troubleshoot the systems at a CIA black site. Nothing unusual, right? I mean, it was a secure facility, heavily monitored, and I was told I'd be in and out within a few hours. The facility itself was far out in the desert, miles from any town or city. I remember the drive there, the emptiness surrounding me as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was eerie, the kind of isolation that made you feel small. I arrived after dark, and the gates were already open for me. The security guard barely glanced at me before letting me in, like he had seen this 1,000 times. The building was cold, even colder than I expected. Concrete walls, no windows, and the hum of industrial equipment running in the background. I followed a guard down a narrow hallway, the lights flickering overhead as we walked. I could tell by the way he moved, his shoulders tense, eyes darting, that he didn't want to be there. "Room 12, the guard said, nodding at the door. "Everything's on the system. You'll be in and out, no problem." I didn't ask any questions. I wasn't paid to ask questions. I stepped into the room, and as soon as the door clicked shut behind me, the atmosphere changed. It was as if the air itself grew heavier, like something unseen was pressing down on me. I told myself it was just nerves, that it was just the weight of the job getting to me. After all, it was just a few servers and security feeds. I sat down at the desk, connected my laptop, and began to work. At first, everything seemed normal. The screens lit up in front of me, data flowing in like it was supposed to. But then I noticed something odd. The surveillance cameras, the ones monitoring the hallways, were glitching. Static appeared on the screen, followed by odd black and white lines. I tried to fix it, adjusting the settings, but no matter what I did, the glitching only got worse. That's when I heard it. A sound, a soft tapping, like fingers drumming on metal. At first, I thought it was just the machinery, or maybe someone walking down the hall. But the sound didn't stop. It was rhythmic, deliberate. I glanced up at the security monitors, looking down the hall. The hallway was empty. I stood up and went to check the camera directly. That's when I saw it, a shape, just barely visible at the far end of the hallway, standing perfectly still. It was tall, its figure cloaked in shadow, and it didn't move. I froze. The tapping stopped, and the silence felt suffocating. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't supposed to be there. I backed away from the monitors, my mind racing. Maybe it was a staff member, someone who had just stepped into the hall. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, and sat back down at the desk. I turned back to the laptop, but my hands were shaking. That's when the lights flickered. I could see the reflection of the light bulbs in the monitor as they dimmed, one by one, before returning to full brightness. I thought I heard something again, a whisper. Just a low, barely audible sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. My skin crawled, and I stood up quickly, turning to face the hallway again. But this time, the figure wasn't at the end of the hall. It was closer, just around the corner. The blackness was thick, like it was swallowing up the light. I didn't know how it had moved, or how long it had been there. My breath quickened, and the sound of my heartbeat filled my ears. I reached for the door handle, ready to leave, but before I could even pull it open, I heard a voice, a low, raspy voice, right behind me. "Stay." I froze, blood running cold in my veins. I turned slowly, my stomach twisting in knots, and there, standing in the doorway, was a man. No, not a man. Something else. His face was pale. Too pale, like it had been drained of life. His eyes were wide, too wide, almost as if they were stretching out of their sockets. The figure stepped forward, his face contorting as he slowly raised a hand to point at me. His fingers were unnaturally long, twisted like they were made of rubber, and they reached out, beckoning me closer. "Stay. Forever," he whispered. I didn't think. I ran. I shoved open the door and bolted down the hall, my breath ragged, my body trembling. The hallway seemed endless, stretching further with each step I took. Every corner I turned, I expected him to be there, watching, waiting. Finally, I reached the exit, my hands numb as I slammed my palm against the security panel to open the door. It didn't open. I tried again. Nothing. The lights above me flickered, and I could hear the sound of footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their feet through the dirt. My heart pounded in my chest. Then I heard it, the whisper again. "Don't leave." The door finally opened. I stumbled outside into the cold desert air and kept running. My breath was coming in sharp gasps as I reached my car, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forget that night. I haven't been able to shake the feeling that something is still watching me, waiting for me to go back. I haven't been able to escape it, and I don't think I ever will.